entitled The Renunciation of Karma Muni, text 1, and 2. Please repeat. Maitreya Uvacha.
Maitreya Uvacha.
Vedavadinim evam.
Vedavadinim evam. Manordhitaram. Dayalu Shalinim Aham. Shukla Bhivaritam Smadan. Maitreya Uvacha. Nirvedavadinim evam. Manordhitaram Munihim. Dayalu Shalinim Aham. Shukla Bhivyaritam Smadan. Maitreya Uvacha. Nirvedavadinim evam. Manordhitaram Munihim. Dayalu Shalinim Aham. Shukla Bhivyaritam Smadan. Maitreya Uvacha. Nirvedavadinim evam. Manordhitaram Munihim. Dayalu Shalinim Aham. Shukla Bhivyaritam Smadan. Maitreya Uvacha. Nirvedavadinim evam. Manordhitaram Munihim. Dayalu Shalinim Aham. Shukla Bhivyaritam Smadan. Maitreya Uvacha. Nirvedavadinim evam. Manordhitaram Munihim. Dayalu Shalinim Aham. Shukla Bhivyaritam Smadan. Okay. Word for word translation. Maitreya, the great sage Maitreya, Uvacha, said, Nirvedavadinim, who was speaking words full of renunciation. Evam, thus, Mano, of Swayambhuva Manu, to Hitaram, to the daughter, Muni, the sage Kardama, Dayalu, merciful, Shalinim, who was worthy of praise. Aha, replied, Shukla, by Lord Vishnu, Abhivyaritam, What was recalling? Translation. There's no purport, so we'll read this in the next text. Translation. Recalling the words of Lord Vishnu, the merciful sage Kardama replied as follows to Swayambhuva Manu's praiseworthy daughter, Devahuti, who was speaking words full of renunciation. Text 2. Rishir uvacha makito vaja putritam atmanam pratyanindite bhagavams tek sharogarbham arurat samprapatyate. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The sage said, "Do not be disappointed with yourself, O princess. You are actually praiseworthy. The infallible Supreme Personality of Godhead will shortly enter your womb as your son." Purport. Kardama Muni encouraged his wife not to be sorry, thinking herself unfortunate, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by His incarnation, was going to come from her body. Om Gyanatimurandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta-vrinda. So, so many and she directly asked her husband to bestow her with favor, and then the one who fearless is to be connected to the Lord. So she was rising up. You know, this reminds me how a lot of people, they go through life and they have what they call a midlife crisis. It's because they're going through life trying to enjoy, just doing what everybody does, thinking, oh, this is what we're supposed to do. Let me get money, let me enjoy, let me get married, let me have kids. And then sooner or later it hits you. You know, am I even happy? What am I doing here? What's the point of life? Why am I here? So because we hear from the Srimad Bhāgavatam and we discuss this all the time. The Srimad Bhāgavatam covers all these topics in so many beautiful ways. And I'm thinking of some stories in the Bhāgavatam, some pastimes rather, that are completely direct, some that are allegorical, some that are personalities speaking about personalities, speaking about personalities, speaking about these topics. You know, and all this is just driving in deeper and deeper perspectives, broadening our view of these topics. You know, it's beautiful once you learn the scriptures and you read them. They're not meant to be read as entertainment. You know, what do we do for entertainment? I go watch this movie, I read this book, you talk about it for, you know, that week or whatever, and then you put it down and you go to the next one. You know, it loses its taste. But the Bhāgavatam, it should be approached with a different mood. It's said that the Bhāgavatam is the literary incarnation of Krishna. So everything that we do is personally related to Krishna. When we chant japa, you know, we could sit and just try to still the mind and chant and focus on every syllable and really try to control the mind that way. And this is good, but the thing is, chanting is not a mechanical process. It's all about establishing a relationship. You know, we hear Krishna is non-different from his name. And Prabhupada would make the point that chanting is just like a baby calling out for its mother. So when we're chanting, we're calling out to Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're calling out to Krishna to please come into my life, take over my life. I'm fallen, I don't know what to do. I need service. So similarly, when we approach the Srimad Bhāgavatam, we should approach it in the same way. That we're approaching it by trying to establish a relationship. So this particular pastime is really wonderful. You know, I was thinking about it as a whole. The beginning of the Bhāgavatam deals with a lot of questions, a little bit of stories, and then the second canto, material creation, a lot of like really technical aspects. And this part of the Bhāgavatam gets into this whole saga, that deals with, I believe it's like 9 chapters, dealing with Kardama Muni, Devahuti, and ultimately Lord Kapila Dev. And I don't know if anybody else has ever thought this way, but there's certain pastimes that happens, and I just think, oh wow, if somebody would just make a movie out of this would be amazing. Like it's so captivating. It has everything that you're looking for in there. And you have Kardama Muni engaged in his bhajan, doing his worship, and he's instructed by his father Brahma to create progeny, create offspring to fill up the population of the world. And he goes through certain penances and meditation and austerities to be able to do that in the proper way. On the flip side, now we have Kali Yuga. It's the complete opposite. People are doing no austerities, no thought. It's just lust. And what happens when lusty people get together and create progeny? It creates more lusty progeny. It creates more degraded civilization. Things become lost. So Kardama Muni is engaged in this bhajan, and then he meets the Lord face to face, and the Lord instructs him on these matters. So that's what we heard here, how this first text says, recalling the words of Lord Vishnu, the merciful sage Kardama replied as follows to Swayambhuva Manu's praiseworthy daughter. So as Devahuti was expressing these feelings of lamentation, Kardama Muni started remembering his meeting with the Lord. And in that meeting, he was instructed to, you're going to have 9 daughters. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, and then you'll take renunciation. So he's coming to that point of his duty, you could say. And then later on in this chapter, we hear about this renunciation that he goes through, where he meets Lord Brahma again. And then he meets the Lord again in the form of Kapila Dev. He offers his prayers and he leaves. But first, Lord Brahma, he instructs him to give away his 9 daughters to worthy husbands that, meet there, or whose personalities line up, you could say. Not just willy-nilly giving them away to anybody. That was a specific point that's made here. And then, later on in the subsequent chapters, you'll hear very vast elaborations of this Sankhya Yoga, leading to complete Bhakti Yoga by Kapila Dev to his mother Devahuti. But I was thinking about this topic that I mentioned about, sometimes I hear certain pastimes and I think, oh, wow, if we would just make a movie out of this, like, wow, so many people would become devotees. So I was reviewing this yesterday, and it made me think, the first time I came to New York City as a devotee, actually, it's probably like 5 years ago, and we came to distribute books at a Comic-Con. Does everybody know what a Comic-Con is? Okay. So you're trying to distribute books to Spider-Man, to Superman. Hey, Spider-Man, catch. So, as I was going there, my initial thought was, oh wow, these people are really into like all these mystical aspects. They're going to love the Srimad Bhāgavatam. You go there and give them that. But what I found was that, at least for my own personal dealings, people that are interested in all this fantasy, and they can really get into it. But as soon as you give them something that's, you say, oh yeah, this has all the same mystical aspects, but it's real, then immediately they can shut it off real quick, So it's an interesting point, because to say, if I want to sit down and watch a movie or read a fantasy book, it requires a certain suspension of disbelief. It's not real, but you have to disconnect from that so you can actually enjoy it. Try to enjoy it, but in a material sphere, enjoy it. So it requires this suspension of disbelief. And I was thinking about this. It's like sense gratification. This idea that we'll be happy in the material world is the same exact thing. But we become conditioned, so we've been doing this for so long that we're so caught up in that disbelief that we're so far disconnected from reality. So then we go on and on and on, trying to enjoy and do things that will bring us pleasure, but it's, just chewing the chewed, just the same repetitive things in different variations. So why are we caught in this situation of doing this? Why do people, get caught up in these fantasies, or this illusion, or this disbelief, this disconnection of reality? Ultimately, we're trying to escape ourselves, you could say, our false ego, from one way of looking at it. But we're trying to escape the pain, the fear, the anxiety, the insecurities that we face. This is why people take to intoxicants. You can go out on Harinam and you see people, they're selling all these things out in the open, smoking things in the open, drinking things in the open. And that's just what you can see. Like, what you can't see, there's a lot more. Just throwing that out there. But anyways, you can see people and they seem happy in the moment. But in reality, they're not happy. They're not happy at all. This is why you take to these external things, because you're not fulfilled, or you're looking for some kind of fulfillment. I used to travel with an advanced devotee, and he always used to make the point that you have to get intoxicated. You have to. The only question is, what are you going to get intoxicated on? Are you going to get intoxicated on sex or drugs? Are you going to get intoxicated on Krishna consciousness? So he's making the point that, you have to get this higher taste. You have to engage in devotional service. You have to give to Krishna. And as you give to Krishna, Krishna will give more to you. And you'll get more and more of a taste. And this way, you'll get intoxicated and you'll want more. You'll want more. And Krishna, he's demanding. At first, Krishna's new to us. It's exciting. You chant Hare Krishna. Oh, it's so blissful. Yeah, I remember one time listening to my Guru Maharaj speak about, he was making a joke that, there's, I forget exactly how I said, but there's different kind of devotees, like one who said, oh yeah, chanting is so magical, it's so it's so amazing, it was it's everything. And he was making the point, like, this is the new devotee. He comes in, for the first week. Oh, chanting is so amazing. It was the greatest experience ever. But then reality comes. We face our lusts, our desires, our anarthas. But the beautiful thing is that, like I mentioned, when we're chanting japa or approaching Krishna, it's like it is establishing a relationship with Krishna directly. So I could chant Krishna's holy names and, oh, that was so amazing. Like I got so high. That was so much nectar. Or you can make a vow to say, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, thick or thin. What's more pleasing to Krishna? I could meet somebody right now and they're like, oh, Prabhu, what do you need? I can give you this, give you that. Let me make your arrangements. Okay, this is nice. But what happens a week later, like 2 weeks later? So when we make this vow, it pleases Krishna. And sometimes we struggle. Krishna sees our struggles. So when we struggle for Krishna, Krishna becomes pleased. I mean, on the similar notion that we have to get intoxicated either through the material energy or through the spiritual energy, through Krishna consciousness. Similarly, we're either going to struggle in the material world or we're going to struggle for spiritual realization. There's no escaping this struggle. So this is transcendence. Because when we're doing everything in relation to Krishna, immediately everything becomes meaningful. I was reflecting on this point of, going to this Comic-Con and seeing, these people who are caught up in all this, ideas of mystical powers, superhumans, fantasies. And I was also looking up, if you look at all like the top grossing movies in the world, more often than not, it's these type of things, these superhumans or some kind of mystical feats or, Star Wars, some kind of like weapons of, spaceships traveling through space. Like the Bhāgavatam has all these things. But I was thinking about it and it reminded me of the beginning of the second chapter of the second canto of the Bhāgavatam, or Shukadeva Goswami begins addressing Maharaj Parikshit. I'm just going to read these. It's just a few texts. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists. Those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. The lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night, either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime either in making money or maintaining family members. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. O descendant of King Bharat, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul, the controller and the savior from all miseries. The highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life." So, by hearing this, one can clearly see what's going on in this situation I'm trying to shed light on. These people are too engrossed in material affairs, and they're unable to see what's going on, that we're going to die, that we are suffering, life is short, that life continues on. We think, YOLO, you only live once. So, I'm just going to live this life, and then I won't have to worry about it in my next life. I mean, if people really even believe this philosophy, like their life would be drastically different because they're still caught up in fear. The only way you can overcome fear is overcoming the samsara, is seeing beyond this. So a devotee sees, okay, I have no choice. Whatever I'm doing now is going to carry over to my next life. So let me start cultivating good habits now. Let me start hearing about the Lord now. Let me start changing my life now. Not that, okay, I know a little bit about Krishna. Let me just carry on, enjoy a little bit for Krishna, a little bit for me, a little bit more for me, a little bit for Krishna. Once I get older, then I'll be more serious. Krishna's right here, right now. You can be in the spiritual world right here, right now. Or you can not be. I mean, it's our choice. What do we desire? Krishna, he rewards us according to the degree of our surrender. And he says, Ye yatamam prapadyanti tams tataiva bhajamyaham. And if we just want a little bit of Krishna, Krishna will give just a little bit of us, a little bit of him, a little bit of protection, a little bit of realization. But the more we wholeheartedly give everything to Krishna, Krishna reciprocates. And this is a beautiful thing to test. I'm not a pure devotee. Sometimes there's struggles, there's challenges. And the last time I was speaking about this, how Krishna, he arranges certain situations to really show deep down, what do we actually take shelter of? Do we take shelter of our mind? Do we take shelter of the material energy? When I get sick, do I take shelter of just watching movies rather than, trying to do something transcendental even though it's difficult? But in these moments, if we just make this test, okay, let me just try. I'm struggling now, but let me just try to amp it up a little bit. Let me give more to Krishna. Krishna immediately gives so many blessings, so many realizations, in so many different ways. I mean, does anybody who's sitting in this room right here, right now, did they know that they would be sitting here, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? I remember the first time, sometimes I go into Sankirtan and I tell people, if you would have asked me if you would have told me 5 years ago that, you'd be a monk, no intoxication, celibacy, all these things, I feel like you're crazy. I just want to have fun. I just want to enjoy. So this is the potency of Krishna consciousness by hearing, and it all comes from this Shabda Brahman, this transcendental sound vibration. And especially when it's uttered by somebody who's living it, who's practicing it, who's realized it, the potency becomes that much more increased. There's this famous verse in the Bhāgavatam that it's glorifying the Bhāgavatam, but then it says it's even more relishable because it's being spoken by Shukadeva Goswami. One of my favorite aspects of the Srimad Bhāgavatam is that we could look over on this shelf and see it just as a book. Okay, there it is, the Srimad Bhāgavatam. The Srimad Bhāgavatam is not limited by these pages. It cannot be contained in a book. We hear, if you go to the heavenly planets, the Srimad Bhāgavatam is that much greater, that much bigger. Because, they have so much time to waste or time to utilize to hear for those who want to. And also, the devotees, one time they asked Srila Prabhupada, they're asking about Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc? Saintly personality, yes, warrior, kshatriya, woman of types. They asked her, if this was Srimad Bhāgavatam also. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes. Because it's glorifying the Lord. It's dealing with the Lord's devotees who are giving everything in a way to glorify the Lord. So this is the Srimad Bhāgavatam. The whole purpose is to highlight how the devotees surrender to the Lord, how they pray to the Lord, how they inquire about the Lord, everything about them in relation to the Lord. And this is substantial. Anything that is not dealing directly with Krishna, insubstantial. On this point of, the Bhagavatam not being limited by these pages and, the glorification of God, the Bhagavatam being substantial and what's not being insubstantial, this is actually the beginning, how the original Bhagavatam was spoken by Krishna to Lord Brahma. He said a few things, but what I want to highlight is that he said, know anything to be directly related to me to be truth, and anything that's not directly related to me to be just the illusory energy, Maya. And then after he spoke this Chatur Shloki, these original 4 shlokas, the Bhagavatam, what did he say? Now, hearing this, meditate on it and expand upon it. So he expands upon it and teaches it to his disciples, his next of kin. And then Narada Muni expands upon it and speaks it to Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva expands upon it. Shukadeva Goswami hears. Shukadeva Goswami hears and expands upon it. So we should also hear the Srimad Bhāgavatam and expand upon it in line with the previous acharyas. It's not that we just become like parrots and recite what we hear. When we're preaching, we need to find a way to connect to others. When we speak in a way, take what we hear, the essence, these pastimes, and speak in a way where it's palatable that others want to hear, that they can taste the supreme nectar that's emanating from the Srimad Bhāgavatam. I was thinking about another point about how I mentioned people. They take to watching movies or reading books as entertainment. They read it. Okay, I read that. I'm done with it. Let me go to the next thing. It's funny how I mentioned, I think of pastimes that, we could take and put into a movie form. And a part of me thinks, okay, yeah, this is awesome. This would be a great idea. Yukta Vairagya, using what we can in Krishna's service. But another part of me thinks, okay, this is just shows how degraded we are as a culture, because, it's said that if we want to see God, we do so by hearing. So we hear, like I mentioned, from the Bhāgavatam, from these personalities. And, to make my point, it's like, I remember I was in Vrindavan, I was getting ready to leave, and I was with one of my godbrothers who was very close in serving my Guru Maharaj in his last days here in his body. And we were with another devotee, and she was inquiring into, different aspects of, what happened behind closed doors. And I really noticed she was really trying to be there, with him, hear so intently and empathically, that be there and hear and feel and experience everything through that hearing. So that really struck me, because it's so easy just to hear and go in one ear and out the other ear. Or we hear and we apply it. We hear in a way that we want to apply it to ourselves. And if we can't find a way to apply it to ourselves, then what's the point of hearing? Boring. So this is how we should hear Krishna Katha. This is how we should hear the Bhāgavatam. We should try to really hear where this is coming from, where it's being spoken from, which platform, and how we can relate to it on a spiritual level, not just a mundane level that's always changing and transitioning. This reminds me also of, I've read Nectar of Devotion, Jaiva Dharma. It goes pretty deep into this rasa tattva, all these different aspects of the different rasas, the different experiences one has through different bhavs, emotions, feelings, in spiritual world, the spiritual reality. I mean, this is actual reality, and it's very much emphasized to hear and understand by Srila Prabhupada and the Acharyas. But reading it, at least for me in my neophyte position of devotional service, you hear it and you think, okay, I don't really understand what's going on, but let me keep reading. So, I know it's purifying, but then you get to a point where it relates to you and you're like, oh yeah, this is nice, I get this. And then you keep going on and it doesn't relate to you. So this is what it's like being conditioned. We're stuck in the false ego and we can't see outside of our own sphere of activities. But the more we can meditate on the divine couples, loving dealings of ecstasy of all sorts, of all different sorts. I mean, this is the perfection of life. And I mean, we may not be at that platform. So then we have to hear all these pastimes in the Srimad Bhāgavatam leading up to that point. This is for our purification. And it's specifically designed to purify us so we can actually come to the spiritual platform and see things clearly as they are, beyond this false ego, beyond lust, beyond all this junk, all this nonsense that remains in the heart. So, one other point I wanted to make in connection to this is that, all I'm really doing is emphasizing of that we should hear Srimad Bhāgavatam. And say if somebody's new and they walks in, they say, everybody has their own ideas of what serving God is, what praying to God is, what connecting to God is. As I mentioned last time, Dr. Ryan and I, we were discussing, that this is our problem. We all have our own conception of what devotional service should be, what our relationship to God should be. So a big part is relinquishing these ideas, these conceptions, and hearing from authorities that no, we sing Guru Puja Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito, by rendering devotional service, spiritual master, he brings transcendental realization from within the heart. So, I'm just picturing, if I was new and walking in, why hearing these crazy stories? How is this pleasing to Krishna? I remember one time when I was first reading the Srimad Bhāgavatam, I was reading the 9th canto, and there was a part that really captivated me. It was and it was really interesting. It's where, I forget his name, King Purava, he's with Urvashi, and I forget his name. Anyways, this king, he's dealing with Urvashi, the celestial goddess, and she comes to, she's sent by higher authorities to go there and enjoy with him, and she makes certain decrees. Okay, I'll stay here and I'll enjoy with you. I'll be your wife, but everything has to be cooked in ghee that I eat, and I never want to see you naked. She also brings her pet goats that need to be taken care of. Anyways, these principles got broken and she left, and it's a whole story. But it captivated me because it was like a transcendental, like Jerry Springer episode. It was like all this chaos and adversity going on, so much drama, so enticing. And I remember I was very enthused after hearing this, and I was talking to a friend who's not a devotee afterwards on the phone, and I just read it, so it was all fresh in my mind, and I just told the whole pastime, which it's a good way to get to indulge, to go deeper into these pastimes after we hear them, after we read them, discuss them with others, go share them with others. Even that's my personal experience, is just how much fun, how much nectar it is. But we hear many, many times in, end of sagas, like I know Prithu Maharaj and Richard Sora, other ones, it says, if one hears this in the morning, if one goes recites this to others, so much benedictions will come. And, it's immediate. That's why we have Bhāgavatam class every day, because we're just constantly discussing and hearing. And it's very auspicious. But the point is, I told my friend this whole pastime. And to me, it was amazing. And then at the end, he was like, so what's the point? What's to be learned from all this? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Some parts of the Bhagavatam are really philosophical, and it's clear to see how things can be derived from it and immediately be applied to life. And some are a little bit more, oh, so that happened. But ultimately, like I mentioned, this is the literary incarnation from Krishna. So if we're hearing these pastimes, it's leading up to dealing with the absolute truth, which is dealing with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. And, to highlight this point, I was thinking about, say you come to a new environment, like me. I just came to visit this temple for a short time, and very easily, you could just be like, oh, Krishnendu, Haribol, how are you? Here's a room, here, go there, stay there, we'll see you at the temple, Hare Krishna. But, if somebody's there to welcome you, oh, how was your travels? Why are you here? How has your practice been going? What's going on? What's life like? And really there, present, inquiring to understand. Immediately you become pleased. This is how deep relationships are formed. So similarly, if I see people and I ask them and inquire to them, it's a sign of me showing expressing interest, expressing care, and then there's a reciprocation involved. It's a relationship. So, as we desire to hear Krishna's pastimes, this pleases Krishna in the same way. And there's a shloka. It's the 17th shloka of the second chapter of the Bhāgavatam. Shinvatam swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyasto hyabhajani vidunoti sritsatam. Thank you, I'm a little slow. But yeah, it's said that by those who have developed this urge, this eagerness to hear about Krishna, then when one becomes freed from all this anartas, this unwanted things in the heart, one becomes purified. So really, if we develop this impetus to hear about Krishna, very quickly we can please Krishna. Very, very quickly. And then, what's more pleasing to Krishna is if we hear about Krishna and then we go share it to others. The more we give, the more we get. But the pure devotee is not doing it because he wants something or she wants something in return. You're just doing it to give. Just to give to Krishna. Because you want to see Krishna happy. You want to please Krishna. Here's Krishna, the source of all pleasure, the source of all happiness. Atma Ram, he doesn't need us at all. But you give something to him, and he becomes more pleased, more satisfied. And then he wants to bless you. And then the more blessings you get, the more realizations, the more ecstasy, and you want to give to others. I mean, it's just such a natural process, and this is the epitome of spiritual life. And this is showcased by the dealings with Krishna, Srimati Radharani, and the gopis. It's said that Srimati Radharani, she doesn't just want to enjoy Krishna all to herself, just by herself. She has all her gopis and she tries to make arrangements, pushing the gopis to enjoy with Krishna. But the gopis, what do? They say, no, we want you to enjoy with Krishna. So they're pushing Srimati Radharani closer and she's pushing them closer. And it's reciprocal. And then on another aspect, the more that Srimati Radharani and the gopis please Krishna, the more Krishna becomes pleased. It's said that Srimati Radharani and Krishna, they have these stolen moments, It's not socially acceptable for them to go associate and enjoy. So, they find certain moments where they're in the same vicinity amongst people, and there's a sidelong glance, and then one catches the other with that glance, and then a little smile grows, and the other one sees, and the smile grows bigger, and it goes back and forth. And I mean, this goes on for eternity. There's no end to it. But the material pursuits are completely fruitless. Completely fruitless. Completely fruitless. They bring nothing but pain and misery. I was talking to one of the guests who came to the program yesterday. He comes often. He was here actually last time when I was giving class. Dr. Ryan. Yeah. Anyways, I was just kind of talking to him, and it just came up about how I asked him how many times, like, how he came to come here, how often he comes. And he said, "Oh, I come every week. I've been coming since February." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's nice. That's amazing." I was doing the same thing, where I was from. I'd go to a preaching program, a club of devotees that would meet and discuss. But it got to a point where it wasn't enough. I'd go to this program and I'd see there was two different Grihastha couples running this program. One Prabhupada disciples and one younger couple. And I could see that, we had this program, and I'd stay as long as I could, talk to them, and then afterwards, I'd leave. And I go back to my situation, which is, my house with my family, which is filled with, meat eating, people watching TV, like cursing, just ignorance, gross ignorance. And I could see them, they have community, sangha. They have somebody there, support. So then, just going once a day wasn't enough. You need more. You need more. So to connect these points. Krishna, he says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Chatur Shloki, what does he say? Mat paragatim bodhiyanta parasparyam katayantas chamam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. The devotees constantly discussing my pastimes, my glories. Tushyanti cha ramanti cha, always driving ever increasingly bliss. So this is what it's like. We should always hanker after more and more association, more and more positive association. We can come to live at a temple. Okay, I'm here. I'm associating with the devotees. This is nice. But how much are we actually associating? You can be in a room filled with 100 people and still feel super lonely. In the Nectar of Instruction, it's described what association of devotees should be like. We should share gifts. We should receive gifts. We should give prasadam, share prasadam. But one could say most importantly is to reveal one's mind and inquire about one's mind. This is the way that you could be together and not feel lonely, that you could feel connected. By me actually saying, oh, Prabhu, I have this going on. What do you think about this? Oh, I thought about the scripture in this way. Please help me out. Or, sharing like this. And because we're associating with devotees, then everything's going to revolve around Krishna. Then it becomes immensely fruitful and profound and purposeful. One more point about this, going to this Comic-Con and these people just being lost in fantasy land. I mean, Comic-Cons are okay. I've been to some other ones which are I go to people and try to give them a book, and I almost want to shake them and just be like, what are you doing? Wake up. Here's real life, live in real life. Anyways, the problem is there's no proper understanding of sambandha. Without a proper understanding of life's goal, all of our direction, all of our aspirations are going to be misdirected, and it's always going to leave us feeling despondent, feeling it's not like something's missing. And even Vyasadeva himself, who was the compiler of all the Vedas, he wrote so many Vedic scriptures, but because it wasn't dealing directly with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how was he feeling? Things weren't whole. It wasn't perfect. Something wasn't right. So, yeah, that's a few thoughts that I had. Thank you, everybody, for patiently hearing. If there's any comments or corrections, questions, please feel free.
Nothing comes to mind. I had a comment. I don't know why I just thought of this, but you're talking about hearing and actually being here. And I guess it just kind of clicked, here and here. They're kind of synonymous in some ways in terms of, hearing from the Bhāgavatam. You have to be actually present, or hearing from devotees and inquiring from devotees. It's not just some mechanical thing where it's oh, okay, well, Rupa Goswami says this in the Nectar of Instruction, so I should just do this. But it's actually he's saying these things in order for us to actually dive a little deeper into connecting with devotees on a deeper platform. And so I guess a question comes up from that is, through your experience, what have you seen that has been effective in actually diving deeper in our relationships with devotees? We see that sometimes people might be paka in their sadhana or their service, but they might end up actually kind of falling out of the temple or or devotional service in general because they don't have deep relationships with devotees. So I was wondering if maybe you could elaborate on how we can dive deeper in our relationships with other devotees.
First, I want to make one point about what you mentioned about, it's a good point. We could just see Rupa Goswami's instruction and say, okay, I'm just going to follow it, but, without diving deep. One time, one devotee asked Prabhupada, I forget who it was, but he said, Prabhupada, I don't feel like offering obeisances. And Prabhupada said, just do it, and then you'll start to see why you want to, you'll get realization from it. So when we're following directions from the authorities, then transcendental realization will follow, unlike when you're doing things materially, it's just blind and it ends nowhere. Krishna even says this himself in the Bhagavad Gita, that those who have a tendency to hear from authorities, they also make rapid advancement on this path. As far as, practical matters of diving deeper into relationships, some people are introverted, some people are extroverted. Some people need, this temple's thriving, there's people running around, devotees all over, of all different sizes, shapes, colors, backgrounds, personalities. So, it can be very nice. Some people are more introverted, and, that kind of can burn them out if they don't have a place to go quiet and be by themselves and think and kind of decompress. So everybody has their own conditioned nature that we have to work through to perform devotional service. But one thing that comes to my mind is, I remember my Guru Maharaj, he was talking about, I don't know if he's in Vrindavan or wherever, but he said at one point, he was chanting 64 rounds every day. And not that that's the special thing in its own self, but to achieve that, if I want to sit and read for 2 hours or chant 64 rounds, it requires a certain level of detachment and renunciation, and what he experienced was that, he'd be walking down the hallway or something, he'd see a devotee come, and instead of just walking and being personal and dealing with the devotee, it's oh, there's a devotee, I gotta chant my rounds, let me walk this way and avoid them. So, we need a balance. We need to see what we personally need, how much association we need. But we need a balance between all these aspects. But ultimately, it can't be superficial. It's very easy to adopt the externals of devotional service, at first it seems impossible, it seems difficult. But then you get used to it, and then what's there, you have all that down. So then you have to dive deep into the internals, because the externals aren't going to bring us back to Godhead. It's said that from subtle to gross, right? You have a thought, thoughts turn to words, words turn to actions, actions, events. So it's we have this achar and prachar, this cultivation of spiritual self, and then also giving it to others externally. But my point is that, we cultivate all these externals because they help us adopt a certain mindset, the mood and behavior that we need. I remember when I actually first came here, I was listening to a class, sitting right over there. I think I was sleeping. I listened to it later online. But it was my Guru Maharaj, and he was talking about, this point where, okay, you're sitting here, you have the perfect dress of a Vaishnava, you have the perfect size, kuntimala, you have, everything, alpaca, but, how deep are you going internal? He was really driving in on this point, because we have to be real with ourselves, and, if we're struggling in certain aspects, then we go approach a senior devotee and inquire about it, or, reveal our mind, reveal our hearts. Devotee association is so precious. We shouldn't ever take it for granted. Just even being able to speak about Krishna is such a blessing. I remember I was in Vrindavan, and the place of Krishna, everybody's chanting Hare Krishna, everybody's talking about Krishna in some kind of way. But I remember being there, and like I had this realization that it's Krishna's like supreme blessing that we'll be able to speak about him. Because I'm there and I'm going to these classes and all this, but then it's like everybody's chanting Hare Krishna. It's kind of like, yeah, I know Krishna. Krishna's there. He's always. Similarly, I remember being in the ashram there. I'm going on a little tangent. I know it's like the end of class. I'll just end here. But anyways, I remember being in the ashram at the temple there in Vrindavan, and I was feeling really, really grateful to be there. And I was thinking, wow, these devotees who stay here at the temple, who live here in Vrindavan, how fortunate they are, like how they don't know how special it is. And then I thought, wait, it seems like something's missing. And I was like, what's missing? We're in Vrindavan, what's missing? Krishna's here. Everything's in Krishna. What's missing was they can't be as connected to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement as you can be here in the West. So I guess to connect the points, you really want to deepen our relationships. Go out and Sankirtan with the devotees. Give Krishna to others. All problems are removed essentially when we're chanting together. You can go to some temples and, you just gather in the temple room and, do the arati and do this and do that, but there's not so much of a tight sangha. But when you're going out and chanting for like 4 hours a day together, you're constantly looking around out there and you're seeing all this crazy, bewildering, like sense gratification and stimulating things. So then it forces you to look at the devotees around you. You see their smiling faces. This develops such deep relationships. Even if, I see this person over there distributing books and I don't even talk to them for whatever reason. Not because I don't like them, but maybe there's brahmacharis and, other things. Just to see somebody going out, who's pushing through the mind, the problems that are there, and distributing books, talking to people, giving Krishna. This is what life is about. It's very inspiring. So in that way, we can rest assured that things will get deeper. Okay, thank you, dear devotees. Srimad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Govinda ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.